Good morning, friends. Today it's a nice, beautiful day. Few clouds scattered in the sky, but overall very sunny. I think it's a nice 15 degrees, so it's kind of like a little bit perfect temperature right there. So today I'm going to be talking about a very important thing I think that people need to understand, especially in this day and age. And this is the concept of non-doing, right? Non-doing does not mean doing nothing. It means to non-do, right? It's a very esoterical concept. If you're familiar with Taoism or even Buddhism, it's a very prominent action that people, I think, misunderstand or misinterpret in a variety of ways. In the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu, non-doing is like one of the big things is you are in a state of non-doing, so you leave nothing undone, right? It doesn't mean to literally do nothing. To me, it means to work with the flow. You're not forcing anything to happen to you. You're doing something because it's already happening, right? And I think that's a very important thing to understand, is that when something bad happens to you, the goal is not to react to it in a way where you're forcing a situation. You're simply working with it and going forward from it, even if it's something that will make you uncomfortable in the meantime. It's the notion that if you force something else to happen, or you force this reality that isn't real upon the situation, you'll end up making things worse. And I think that's a lot of the reason why there's so much atrocities and problems in the world, because people have a problem that happens to them, and the first instinct is to react to it, to sort of combat it in a very divisive and mirror-like way. You have something that happens to you, and the first instinct is to reflect that exact same thing back to it, which is not the natural state of accordance, right? We want to be very calm and collected and go forward in a very pragmatic and rational way. And I think people have a lot of difficulty doing that, mostly because it takes a lot of patience. And I know for myself, it's a huge problem as well. It's a problem for everyone. That's what being a human is all about, basically. So, let's explain this even further, right? If you become very talented at a particular skill, let's say something like basketball, for instance. I never really was very good at basketball, but let's use that as an example. You are in a state where the best time you're playing is when you're in natural accordance, right? People have this sense of being on when, let's say they're making every shot, they're making every play, and that's the natural accordance. They're not forcing themselves to be good, they're just simply being good, right? And of course they have to practice a lot, but the practice comes from a natural accordance. It comes from trial and error. It doesn't come from forcing yourself to be good. If you're practicing doing three-pointer shots all day, you're not exactly forcing yourself to be good. You're not spending like all day trying to get the perfect shot, and if you fail, then it's all over. You're literally just taking shot after shot after shot, in a very natural way. So it feels like it's not something that you have to force. You just kind of do it. And I think that's the state of non-doing. You're just sort of, it's not something that you're actively trying to pursue. It's just like, okay, this is happening, and I'm going with it. And it's the same thing for music. Improvisation, for me, is one of the biggest things. When I'm doing an improvisation and I feel really in it, I don't even feel like I'm doing anything, right? I'm not forcing anything. I'm not putting in any effort whatsoever. You look at the greatest musicians and you see them play, you see that they're not trying at all. It's like it looks very easy to them, and that's because it is. Of course, you don't see the amount of practice, the amount of work they put in to get there, but throughout their entire lives, anytime they're playing, they're not struggling. They're not trying to force anything out of this. I think I brought this example up before. If you try to draw a circle, um, and you try very hard and you force yourself to draw the circle in a perfect way, and then you do it a second time and you just do it really fast, you'll realize that the second time you did it, the circle will actually look a lot cleaner, a lot smoother, and will look more like a circle rather than the first time you did it, which is very forced and looks rough and everything's kind of like jagged and all over the place. That is a state of doing. You're trying to draw the circle instead of just like, yeah, it's a circle. It's like you're just going with it. You're not trying to do anything. That's the state of non-doing. And I think that's a very important distinction. It doesn't mean you're just sitting around in your room all day staring at a wall. It means when you do something, it's not because you're trying to do it. It's because it's just happening to you. You feel like this, oh yeah, I have to do this. I have to I have to flow with this because I'm not actually doing anything. I'm just flowing with it. I'm not trying to do anything else. And I think that's a difficult thing to understand. This is something you could argue is spiritual or whatnot, but it's beyond human words to comprehend, at least for me, unless someone knows a specific word in the dictionary that describes this, of which I have no knowledge of. So that's what it is to me. If you want to be good at anything, you want to achieve happiness, I feel like you need to have that state of non-doing. You have to be in a state where you're not actively trying to do anything. And I think that's where a lot of people fail, is that they try too hard. They're trying way too hard. I mean, that's one of the big things that like people don't like. It's like, oh, you're acting like a try-hard. You're trying too hard. It's like it's evident. It's like in dating, right? People who like fail a lot at dating and they can't get girls is because most of the time they just care too much. They try too hard, and it's unattractive to look like you're trying too hard. You want to make it feel like it's natural, like you're not even really doing anything. You're just sort of going with the flow. And then that's another thing. Being in a state of fear and locking yourself from actively trying to do anything when there's an opportunity is not non-doing. You're actively doing something, which is kind of the ironic thing about this. If you're in a gridlock in your own mind and there's an opportunity for you, and you're afraid to take it because you're afraid you might fail, you are in a state of doing. You're actively not doing something, right? It's like you're forcing this mindset into you instead of going what's the natural process, which is to take that opportunity and to go with it and see where it takes you. And I think people make a lot of mistakes in that area. If we can go into the politics again, which is what everyone loves to talk about now, have a lot of people trying really hard to do things without realizing the consequences, without realizing that they might fuck everything up, but they're so set on trying to get something out of it. They don't care how long they don't care that it's going to take a while, right? Human progress is something you build over time. It's not something you can just implement into a government system overnight. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of non-doing. It takes a lot of cultural shifts and a lot of changes in what people value. But people sometimes are impatient and they want things done immediately, and that causes problems because you're forcing a progress that hasn't happened yet, right? And that's when you get things like overinflation. You get things like rigid poverty, or concentrated poverty is a better term. You get things like starvation in some situations, some dramatic situations if you want to look at the USSR or China. And it's the same thing with corporations. You have corporations that force themselves to grow. They want to grow. They want to get bigger. And that ends up hollowing out their entire infrastructure. They end up losing sight of what they actually were trying to accomplish as a company when they first started. They end up becoming very disjointed and segregated, and people start trying to fight each other basically to get promotions and to get raises, because there's this notion that we need to keep expanding, we need to keep growing, which is another toxic thing that happens with corporations, is that they don't want to go with a natural accordance. They don't want to say, all right, we're big enough, we can just chill, we can just stay as it is, but they want to keep growing, they want to keep expanding, enforcing it, even though they might not necessarily need it or it's not a requirement, but it still happens regardless. And that's all due to impatience. It's all due to not seeing the bigger picture. And that's why, close to, I think it was like 80% of businesses fail, and that includes big corporations. People think these big corporations are like these monoliths that are impossible to destroy. A lot of them default. A lot of them go bankrupt, which I think people don't realize. So anyway, those are my thoughts for today. And I hope you have a wonderful day.